All right, Sabrina, I'm going to fire this thing up.
Okay.
Notes?
Jerry's like, what?
Some of the DSL folks.
I got it.
Oh, Sabrina's got it.
I can do it. I was planning it.
That's no taker we have.
You heard enough questions, right?
I'm used to it.
Although my parents can get a lot of questions.
They were good for cancer.
They are.
That's really why you're doing
Oh, no.
You have no centuries.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for making it down to Yachts. We appreciate it. Thank you to my peers at DSL and OPRD and PLCD for making the drive out from Salem to as well. This is RAC meeting number 6 of the Ocean Renewable Energy Rulemaking Advisory Committee. We're recording it. We have the Adobe Connect account up and running. We have the conference line going. We're at the Yachts Commons today. Most of you already found the bathrooms, but if you haven't, they are on the opposite side of the building, right the store, and make a right before you leave, and those are all the way down there. We have some donuts and some bananas, and I believe Leon is bringing some coffee. I have some water cups over there, and there's some various water cups around here. In the rare case that we happen to be sitting here when the investigative inspections of earthquake happens, please feel free to assume that the meeting has concluded and make your way east. Let's see, what I want to start with here today. I want to start with some, let me do a round table and then we'll do some housekeeping. So, Andy, you want to start with you?
Yeah, Andy Lanier, Marine Affairs Coordinator with DLCD.
Chris Costelli, Policy Analyst, Department of State Lands.
Delia Kelly, Ocean Energy Coordinator of EFW.
Jason Bush, OWIT.
Laurel Hillman, Ocean Shore Specialist, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Walter Chuck, Port of Newport, Corporate Representative.
And I'm Sabrina with the Rules Coordinator at DSL.
Joanne Manson, Master Planner with the Oregon Military Department.
Mike DeBlasi, Aquatic Resource Coordinator, Department of State Lands.
Jerry Hudson, Proprietary Coordinator, Department of State Lands.
Scott Mullen, Oregon Fishermen's Game Committee.
Has anyone joined us on the phone yet? Okay, great.
That doesn't mean it's on mute, does it?
It looks like it's red.
It's live and
Doesn't look live.
live and so. A couple things I just wanted to touch on housekeeping wise is the first thing is the governor's recommended budget came out, and it's not great for sort of bleak future for the next biennium. A lot of agencies are facing up to 12% cuts for general fund agencies. In conjunction with her press release, I want to let you guys know that DAS sent out a notice to all agencies to implement immediately, which included holding vacancies open for a minimum of 60 days before filling, and halt all non-essential travel within the agency. Like I said, this just came out recently. I'm not sure what it means yet, but I would probably assume our next meeting in January will be at DSL. And of course, we will have the Adobe Connect option and the conference call option as well. Probably our future RAC meetings will be in Salem. Of course, essential travel will include doing the rulemaking hearings in the affected coastal community, so we will be doing the hearings out first.
How many more RAC meetings do you anticipate?
That's an excellent question. I was thinking maybe a couple, but let's see how today goes. We're starting on proprietary rules today. And then our next one will be RAC meeting number 7. we'll jump back to the rule fill rules. We're giving Kirk a month off. And we'll see how much we really feel like we need to conclude, we need to wrap up with those. Maybe we can jump back during that meeting to the proprietary rules as well. A couple questions. Also on that same line, the legislative session is coming up. DSL does not have any legislative concepts associated with ocean renewable energy or otherwise. We don't really have any controversial POPs. For some of you that are familiar with Oregon Ocean Science Trust, we did have a $1 million general fund to ask POP for them, which did not make it into the governor's recommended budget, as I think was expected. Senator Roder, I know, does have a secondary bill teed up to provide some funding to the boost through the legislature. I think they'll get some headway and it will likely be scalable. So we'll see what sort of financial support the boost might get next time. With that said, the boost is going forward with rulemaking to establish sideboards for a competitive grant program, which they plan to have in place by the kind of session in July. And it looks like some coffee came, so please feel free to help yourself. And that's my housekeeping. Does anybody else have some housekeeping they would like to go over before we sort of start into the rest of the agenda?
So Chris, what was the funding for?
For the boost? The funding for the boost was for some part-time administrative support. Right now, DSL's been providing a lot of support program, and also to have seed money to help them begin a grant program, for funding their shore research. So if anyone else has anything sort of general news that they want to discuss before we get started here.
Others in the kitchen. Welcome.
We have a couple of brief discussion items here. I was asked, we had a... Oh, hold on a second. I got a note here from somebody about the dial.
I think it's not on. Because ours is on.
I got a message from
I know, ours is too.
Hugh Lake
I
that
don't
he
know,
and
Dick
Nick
talked to me and told me I was.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Is it on? Or?
Thanks, guys.
It's not on.
I don't see any.
No, when it's red, it's not on. Yes.
Well, the whole
waiting
display
on
board
mine.
wasn't working the whole time, so I don't know, because I dialed and it just...
They are on. Let's see.
That would
Try
be
again.
on.
Yeah.
That's on. See, so then
Yeah, it was on earlier.
yeah, when it's red, it's not on.
888.
Yeah, the bottom one.
Oh, it was not on.
No.
Well, it must have shut itself off because it was.
Okay.
Because I dialed and she talked to me and told me what to do, and blah, blah, blah. And
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign.
she didn't want the bottom.
Your access code was not recognized.
No,
Please
that's
re-enter
not.
your access code, followed by the pound sign.
I did the password, yeah.
967 4245.
To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, press #. Please enter your host password. There are 8 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press *#.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for calling in. This is the Ocean Renewable Energy Rulemaking Advisory Committee. We have been rambling along here, thinking that you guys were on the phone, so hopefully you are now.
Yep, thank you very much.
Rick's here.
Yeah, we're here.
Who else on the phone?
All right.
Nick's here again.
Excellent.
Who else is on the line?
Matt Sanders.
Hi, Matt.
Justin Kluwer's on.
Good morning, Justin.
Good morning. Dan Helene.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for your text.
Pleasure.
Rick Williams.
Hi, Rick.
Link,
Hi, Hugh.
Nick Edwards.
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Okay, so we did a very quick, guys on the phone, folks on the phone, we did a quick round table in the room, and just got started. We did a housekeeping where we discussed the governor's recommended budget, which came out last week, just briefly, and the fact that in conjunction with that, agencies were given a notice from DAS on a couple of cost savings items. I guess the one that's most applicable would be for agencies to halt non-essential travel for the remainder of the biennium. So while this RAC meeting is down here today in Yachats, in conjunction with an OPAC meeting, which is tomorrow, most of our RAC meetings the future RAC meetings will likely be at a location in Salem, hopefully DSL. But we will try to provide conference call option and Adobe Connect. And hopefully Adobe Connect is up and running for you, for those of you that are logged on. Is anyone, I know Dan's on, right?
Yep, it's working for me.
Okay, great.
This is Charlie. I'm in the process of logging on now.
Okay, hi Charlie.
Apologies, I had another call that ran late.
Yeah, no problem. We're just getting started here. Actually, one thing I wanted to ask you folks about with regard to the housekeeping too is that I was contacted by Oregon State, and this might go into the next brief agenda item. Their lobbyist about. Do you guys remember? Anyone here remember Representative Nancy Nathanson's bill with regards to ocean power districts? I'm going to talk to them on Friday, but I'm going to talk to OSU on Friday. Supposedly there's still maybe some interest in that, and I was curious before I talked to them on Friday if Scott or Jason or anybody else on the phone has been in contact with Representative Nathanson about revisiting the Ocean Power District idea.
I have not been.
I told her it was a terrible idea. I don't know why she's still talking about it.
Okay.
It's a baseless. It's just this random concept they came up with, and it doesn't apply to the legal system. It doesn't apply to planning. It doesn't apply to the law. It would be a massive rewrite.
Yeah, and in light of the recently adopted Part 5, it seems very difficult to somehow work out
I don't understand. I tried to understand why she wants to do it. I can't get into the basis of what the intent is. Except once upon a time she talked about wanting to make sure that wave energy companies put enough money back into the public system because she had felt like the state had been burned on telecom or something. I don't know what it was. If the industry was making money off of the state's resource, they ought to be paying back to the state. And I said, agreed, but can we get an industry first before you start taxing them? And she seemed to agree with that. But
So who's interested in bringing it back up?
well, that's the telephone message that represents
why is OSU on this?
That's what I'm asking about.
Why is he involved?
I don't know yet. I can go with the phone tag.
Okay.
You wanted to ask me about Representative Nathanson's bill from, I was brought up twice, I think. So I'm ready to go and play phone tag, but I will see him Friday. Brief updates. DSL discussion with Dr. Haggerty of OSU regarding financial assurance. And this kind of came out of our last RAC meeting where we had a discussion about the deployment of scientific equipment and in the territorial sea, and actually sort of with a real life example of the Enroll project, which Jerry and Kirk are working on. It doesn't have a Google project. I did have a call with him. He was recommended by Rick Williamson, I believe. He's the VP of research. I know, Jason, I got an email from you recently that maybe VP of research at OSU as well.
Sager, the woman who Sager, last name is Sager, S-A-G-E-R, I think, something like that.
Okay. Well, we had a very nice call, Dr. Haggerty and I. It was really a very general call, sort of a who, what, where, why of DSL, starting with why am I calling, what's our responsibilities for management. We talked about the regulatory program, we talked about the proprietary program, we talked, I tried to make sure it was clear, sort of asking what would work for public institutions and research institutions generally for providing some sort of assurance that deployed scientific projects and equipment can be retrieved. And as you would expect, so I think you sort of focused on it from OSU's perspective. I want to make it clear there's no issue with OSU. But I did talk about the Renewable project a little bit, and we're going to get back. He had a little bit of homework for me, and I obviously had homework for him. He was going to talk to his researchers at Hatfield and his folks in their insurance department and their financing departments. He had questions about how crab pots were treated by DSL from wood. A lot of deployed scientific equipment is basically the size of crab pots, and I talked with ODW and Hugh about their crab pot retrieval program. I don't know if that's exactly the right name for it, but clearly those are commercial fishing is dealing with ODW, and then there's a program, that's sort of industry ODW program for the retrieval of lost crab pots. So that's some information with regards to that question. I was going to follow up a little bit. He asked about can DSL and OSU enter into agreements and maybe do some umbrella coverage. And the answer is probably yes. There's Oregon State University. There used to be an actual state agency and a fraternal relationship now changed a little bit. So for OSU, yes. But once again, I'm asking Dr. Haggerty sort of his perspective from the research industry, if it is, or public universities, about what is feasible for them to get in conjunction with grants and things like that. So we are going to follow up January 5th to talk a little more about that, and hopefully I can provide. So Rick, I don't have a memo for the RAC today. Hopefully you can hear most of what I just said. But I will have a follow-up meeting with Dr. Haggard.
I think it's off again.
It's off.
Red, I told you.
Yeah, it's red. It's off.
What's doing?
Disconnected.
You chat them and see what's
Yeah.
or it may be on mute.
No, it's red. It's off. It just disconnected somehow.
Okay, mine's not.
Yeah, we realized that.
Cable is getting.
It just turned off again.
Doctor using these to sign this.
Mine is talking inside all the air is
So
real.
I think that should be called Dr. Using. Cindy Sater, VP of Research and
Hey, Mike, let me turn it up again.
The plug to the
Not good.
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, please enter your host. There are 9 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press star pound.
Right now, it should be active again.
Hi everyone, we seem to be having some conference problems here with the equipment. It seems to shut off after 10 minutes on its own, but we're not sure if that's the problem or maybe something else.
Is there a support line you guys can?
Yeah, I was on earlier, and after 15 minutes, it automatically shut off. Your conference call was over, is what it said.
It's part of the budget constraint process. Shorter meetings.
Or the access isn't budgeted for longer than 15 minutes.
Agreed.
Feels like another quarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even think we have to vote on that.
So we have folks back on the line?
I don't see a problem, so I don't know what to say other than,
Keep an eye for the red light.
yeah.
Okay.
Maybe they're hanging up on you out there, you know.
Oh,
We
there.
have the same system at our office, and sometimes you have to call whoever organizes the conference call. So there should be a support line associated with your call in, you might need to call them.
USA.
That's more likely the issue than on this end.
Yeah, you have to ask for it to stay open for the 2-hour period or whatever period your meeting is. We do the same thing. I had a,
Can one of us call?
I don't. Which number would we call?
We've never ever done that. We've never ever done that.
the USA caller paid. This one? Or the USA toll-free conference?
Well, that's what I called in to get in.
Whoever you take your
We've never ever done that. Ours are permanently assigned to us. So we have our own permanently assigned 3 lines that we pay for. So yeah.
Do you want me
We've
to
never ever had
try
this
calling?
problem with it.
I'll try the 800 number.
Is there an 800?
Well, it's an 888 and the same number I dialed in. Maybe there's a way to.
I think that'll just connect you.
Yeah.
Is there somebody at your office?
Let's see if it hangs up again or not. If it does, we'll try again.
She's not in.
I've got a free conference call.
We still have you guys on the line right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll proceed.
Yeah. Soldier on.
Soldier.
Okay. So I want to do a quick check-in about where we think we are at this point after 6 meetings. Scott has a question first.
To go back to your discussion with Dr. Haggerty.
Yes.
Does any of the discussion concern intentionally abandoning anchors that were intentionally abandoned?
No, but I can figure that out next time. I'm going to go over that right now. And
Somebody's typing
We would think that too.
on the phone.
yeah.
We would hope that.
And just as an aside, so some of you are going to OPAC tomorrow, and the Marine Debris Action Plan will be discussed there. And there's quite a few, different subjects and topics with regards to marine debris. But I believe one of the items that OPAC discussed is scientific projects or equipment. Isn't that one of the things in that memo? So that came up in both the land-based and ocean-based work groups that met out and moved toward twice in 2016 over 2 different periods. So just a heads up for you that are going, I think there'll be a discussion about that as well. Is everyone good? Guys on the phone, folks on the phone, can you still hear us?
Barely hear you.
All right.
Yeah, I need to speak up a little bit.
Okay. Well, we're going to do a quick process check-in. Did you guys have all the materials and everything on the phone that were sent out? I guess they do. Okay.
I did. Okay.
So process check-in. I want to just hear from everybody a little bit. You might remember we did this at the first meeting to hear what was important to folks and to set up a parking lot. Different issues. I think we've worked to try to address a lot of those, from first right to apply to I had a call with BOEM. And as we get into the get into the rules, thank you. I want to discuss, as we get into the proprietary rules, which are a little different than the regulatory rules, I kind of want to see what's important for you to see, for folks to see coming out of that, sort of maybe your top couple of issues. And I'll start. Let me start with what I think is the most important thing to DSL, which is charged for land management of that. And you'll see there's two policies in the policy section, OAR 141, 140, 0030, and then sub 3 and sub 5. So there's a number of overarching policies for DSL. The two most important ones for us is to ensure the collective rights of the public to use sale submersible lands for fishing, navigation, commerce, and recreation. More commonly known as the public trust rights or values. Those are our primary management mandates on submersible lands. Court cases at the legislature have set up a process for us to lease and provide authorizations on those lands.
Yes, I'm having real trouble hearing you.
Okay. So much that they don't unreasonably interfere with those, and that's kind of the overarching principle for our management of submersible lands. And the second policy that I see being very important to the department to follow was the policy direction that came out of the Territorial Sea Plan Working Group, and that is sub 5, which discusses sort of taking a precautionary approach to the development of ocean renewable energy in the territorial sea and providing a sort of path forward for phased development. And so those are the two that I'd really like to see these rules sort of make sure we protect and make sure there is a path forward for a good actor to go from deployment of equipment to deployment of a demonstration project to a commercial build-out, so much as it's allowed and they continue to be a holder in good standing, and that we make sure that we protect the public trust values of those submersible lands in the territorial sea. So those are the two drivers for me in my agency. So with that said, as we get into the rule, I'd like to hear from everyone sort of if they have anything that they think we still need to flush out more from what was on the parking lot list before, or B, what their perspective is as we move into the leasing rules.
Could you repeat the OARs that guide those guiding principles?
Yep, OAR 141, 140, 0030, sub 3. State-owned submerged and submersible lands are managed to ensure the collective rights of the public, including riparian owners, to fully use and enjoy the resources for commerce, navigation, fishing, and recreation, and other public trust values. These rights are collectively referred to as public trust rights.
And then you define
and 5.
Okay. And what OAR guides that? You mentioned OARs.
This is an OAR.
I'm sorry. Okay, so this one and this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this is a very old concept, right? Public trust rights. Jus publicum goes back to Roman times, English common law, Equal Footing Doctrine, Submerged Lands Act, and then sub 5 is a very new policy, but it's one that has been flushed out by a lot of stakeholders who are in this room and that were interested in the development of ocean renewable energy in the territorial sea. And that says, pursuant to Part 5 of the Territorial Sea Plan, Oregon prefers to develop renewable energy through a precautionary approach that supports the use of pilot projects and phased development in the initial stages of commercial development. And I think important in supporting that is to have a path forward. And I know we spent a few meetings discussing first right to applies, and you'll see that I've added language in the rules to that effect.
And those are good guiding principles. There was one other housekeeping thing I forgot to mention. We did have an election since our last meeting. Mm-hmm. So as that pertains to DSL, who the governor was before, but the other two persons on your land board, state land board are who?
Tobias Reed, Secretary of State. Treasurer.
Close.
Secretary of State is now not Gene Atkins.
Dennis Richardson.
In January.
Dennis Richardson. And then the state treasurer was?
Tobias Reed.
Former legislator.
Okay. Just thought we should all just have that.
Absolutely.
context.
And Reed is fairly familiar with this. He was one of the 2 legislative representatives on the Oregon Innovation Council that has funded OWIP for the last 10 years. So at some level, he knows about the state's efforts with marine renewables. He's not as engaged as others, but he knows about it.
Jason Bush.
So just for
You're on the floor.
the parking lot issues in general, I thought it might be nice. We had a long list once upon a time. I know that some of those are sort of like outside the scope of our efforts here and time limits, but I think it'd be nice to bring it back and show us what it is that we originally raised, sort of remind ourselves of some of the things we brought up.
I agree.
You keep that if you still have that. It was on the chart like that.
We do. Yep, we do. And I think we've addressed it. And we typed it up. Yep.
Wonderful.
So actually, why don't I look at it when you all get lunch, and we can see what's left on that. Because I think we've tried to address what I thought was on that list, but we can come back to it and see what has been addressed, what hasn't, what's still important, or maybe what's already been flushed out, and what's new. So you've got that. So Jason, since you started talking, what's important to you to see coming out of these rules, if there's anything new? Or if you want to read it or something, or if you want to pass, that's fine too.
No, I'll take the opportunity. I read I think the vast majority of the rules, and I didn't see any glaring red issues. I saw a lot of little yellow issues that I just wanted to chat through. And it's complex language, and I think there's a lot of hidden meaning, or could be some implications of the words that we select. So I just want to be mindful of how we draft this stuff. So I do have a lot of little comments, nothing glaring. Again, the state of the industry. I mean, practically speaking, how many companies are actually going to get to go through this anytime in the next few years? Not all that many. The test center is going to hopefully absorb the vast majority of the focus. Camp Rilea, though, is a close second. And when we're thinking about how these rules read, kind of think about it through the lens of Rilea, mostly.
You said Camp Riley in particular, not NEMREC, you're thinking?
NEMREC first.
NEMREC, okay.
First. I mean, if we get the grid connected test site, that's where obviously the majority of the development will occur, rightly so. But for technologies that are near shore or bottom mounted, Camp Rilea is a very special place because really I don't know of any other area in the United States that could be used for a nearshore test site the way that Riley could be used. It's just optimal. And as long as OMD and the Guard remains interested, I think that area will continue to develop toward being a formal or at least de facto test center for nearshore bottom-mounted devices, of which there are several. Not all of them of which are primarily focused on creating.
And this is Rick, if I can pile on. The Oregon Military Department has a memorandum of understanding with Oregon State University so that we are proceeding in brace and not surprising each other. And the Oregon Military Department's mission is to train soldiers, and so we look to NEMREC, PMEC for advice on testing.
Great.
Yeah, and this is Dan from NEMREC. Our PMEC set site is 6.5 nautical miles offshore, so it's outside the territorial sea as far as a lot of these discussions go, apart from obviously our cables that will be running in through the territorial sea to land. But Camp Rilea offers a great opportunity for shallow water testing of devices.
Great, thank you. I'm going to let Scott ask one clarifying question, is that right?
Yeah. Isn't there a Marine Corps base in Hawaii that has some sort of, how is that different from Camp Rilea for conditions?
It's got a 30, 60, and 80 meter berth, floating technologies only thus far. The devices that have been in there to date and the ones that are planned to deploy over the next 3 years are all utility scale floating buoys of some form. not near shore, not bottom mounted, not shallow water technologies. I mean, it can't.
30 meters is pretty shallow water. That would be similar to what you can find at Camp Bradley.
Agreed, but even at 30 meters, most of the devices that would be interested in being in the near shore are talking at 10 meters. So right below the surface, taking advantage of that energy happening right below the surface of the waves. So, and as far as I know, there's been no discussion about accommodating a bottom-mounted device at WETS, Wave Energy Technology site, testing site at Kaneohe Bay. And also it's owned by the Navy, so you only get to go there if the Navy's interested in your technology. So it's not a public place the way the NIMREX test site will be. There you go.
All right, I'm going to keep going, give everyone just a minute or so to hit you with the high points here. I just want to make sure I still take 4 hours, so we'll be continuing to amend these rules. While we start, we'll go to Laurel now. Is there anything from OPRD's perspective that we're not considering or should want to see highlighted in these rules?
Not that hasn't already come up.
Okay. Thank you. Walter?
You know, it keeps coming up, and I know it's not under discussion, but the top water footprint versus the seafloor footprint.
Okay.
And also exclusion zones, buffer zones are going to be required, and then also just navigation through these sites, whether or not they're going to be closing navigation.
I heard part of that, but I wasn't able to hear it well enough to...
It was top water footprint versus bottom footprint and navigability through an authorized area.
Exclusion zones.
Exclusion zones.
Buffer zones.
So do you want me to opine on that, Chris?
No, not yet. I want to let everyone get around. I'm trying to capture a few just high points right now for us to consider.
All right.
But there'll be a chance for plenty of discussion. Sabrina, I'm going to guess you're good. Joanne?
Yeah, I think everyone has, and the rules as proposed have addressed a lot of concerns. So.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike, good. Jerry, good. Scott? I think from fisherman's perspective.
Well, I think the process laid out in the Territorial Sea Plan in Amendment 5 kind of went through most of the issues. How we interpret those or how the rules are developed to accomplish those. I think we have to be, as Jason said, I couldn't agree more, the words that we use for the rules can't be ambiguous. They have to be plain, easy to understand, and really able to be interpreted only one way. I think that's key, is that it can't be something that two different people could legitimately look at it and see two different results. So that, and of course, continue to be concerned about debris left on the seafloor either after a test is over, after an instrument is deployed, after a pilot project is completed, all those sort of things.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just pile on Scott's comments on the ambiguity of the language? I'm concerned about ambiguity, but I'm also concerned about really significant language that is the product of deep state experience. So the state selects a word. You're not drafting this stuff having never done it before, right? So you're using select phrases and terms that have a lot of background. And I'm not going to be aware of all of that. So, and I'm a lawyer, so some of the other folks from the regulatory folks probably understand it better. But maybe if you can kind of call out, why are you using these catchphrases or something? There's some significance to this that has basis in other industries or other set of rules, or why are you using those terms?
Sure, and I'll try to remember that one. I want to let everyone talk real quick.
Sure.
I'll come back to that. Otto, anything we need that we're not considering or you think is important for local government? And I know we did this once before, but now that we've been looking at the land management, now we look at the leasing rules, I want to revisit sort of a quick roundtable.
The only reason I'm standing up is to honor our friends on the speakerphone. I'm not about to get into some major oration here, so you can relax. 4 score and 7 years. It was a decade ago. Look, to restate what I think I've been asked to drive home in this process is that at the end of the day, when we look at what we've done here, that R&D means R&D. That it's not really some kind of slippery slope to commercial scale, utility scale development. So we'll be looking very closely at the outcome of the draft regulations and examine it with that point of view that there is a bright line between how we go from something that's in the water temporarily and vetted with the communities and how that ends up morphing, if it ever does, into some kind of commercial scale site. The other twin issue is we want to see as much of a clear path to talking to the state land board as possible in terms of our participation and once projects are going forward. And that, by implication, that means having a generous view of how the JART membership and JART activities and JART process. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, DLCD's perspective or thoughts with regards to the proprietary rules?
No, I would just say that I think we're doing pretty well staying on the path. There's been a few times where I've seen this group have a tendency to lean into a policy discussion, and where we've already had those and Part 5 has been adopted as part of state policy, I would encourage us to stay true. There will obviously be moments where we didn't think of everything, and so in that instance I would urge us to go back to the 2 DSL kind of guidelines of public trust values, the phased development approaches, and the precautionary approach. Otherwise, I think we're doing well.
Great, thank you. Yep. And we are charged, now that Part 5 has been adopted, and as part of Goal 19, we are charged with making sure the activities we authorize are consistent with that statewide planning goal. Delia, ODF&W?
Yeah, I support all the notions that I've already heard here today, but in particular, the need for clear, non-ambiguous language. I also picked up on what Walter kind of reminded us of is that there's been an issue with projects in the past and different interpretations of what the footprint means. So in particular, wanting to make sure, I have a couple places in here, maybe like Jason said, some sort of not red but yellow issues that I'd like to talk through, but and that includes some suggestions on how to deal with the footprint issue and clarification. So the most important thing, though, to us is protecting the rights of existing users and making sure that there's fair treatment for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Delia. How about we start on the phone now? Rick, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Based on what we've done here and also the work done in California, the permitting footprint is the seafloor extent of the anchoring boundaries, and the watch circle is the surface expression of it. And we're working with the Coast Guard for marking as an area to be avoided to notify people of the type of equipment that's in the area. It's not an exclusion area. It's not a limited access zone. It's a matter of notification of what's there and then prudent seamanship around it. As long as we can be consistent in Oregon with what's going on elsewhere, so we don't end up being, this unusual point of, this is the Oregon way. I think we should actively avoid, standing out and, this is the Oregon way, and although other things are approved elsewhere around the world, it's not good enough for Oregon. I think we should avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, why don't you, we'd like to get a few thoughts on how you think the proprietary rules are going and what is important to you and your stakeholders.
Yeah, I don't have anything real significant to add from what I've heard already. I think language precision is important. I think understanding what the requirements are and what they aren't, I think is really important for that certainty aspect aspect, and I think I've relayed that in the past. So outside some of some of the details that we're still working on, I think that's probably the most important, is just to be able to provide precise language and certainty so that the industry understands what the expectations are and can do its best to meet them.
Sounds good. Thank you. Hugh, do you have any sort of overarching considerations that you'd like to either bring up or reiterate? Nick, same question to you.
Okay. Yeah, Hugh's jumping through a few hoops with our crab season here. Clearly the footprint that Walter brought up is going to be a big issue for transiting and usage down the road. And the clear language for all of this is that it's interpreted in one way. Like Scott said, we don't want it, saying two different things. And then also, a big thing for our industry is when the project is over, in clear language that all of that, the gear is removed when the project is finalized.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everything that's deployed comes off the ocean when they're done.
Okay, subject to the Territorial Sea Plan exceptions for decommissioning in place, of course.
Yep. And we can discuss that further. Thank you for that. We want to get just everyone's points down here. What's important to them too. Charlie, I think you are last.
I think in general I agree with what's been said. Here I think folks have kind of touched on most of the things that are important to our constituency. I think the precision of the language is pretty critical on the discussion around the footprint as well. I think is important to our constituency. So in general I think we're on track and in agreement with what others have said here.
Great. Dan, I didn't forget about you, but you're not a member of the RAC, but we will have a public comment portion here a little later. So please hang in there if you have something you'd like to add.
That's absolutely understandable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other RAC members on the phone that I missed? Okay. With that said, I will fire up a version of the rules. And put it on the screen in the Adobe Connect. Hopefully that is still working for you, for folks that are joining.
Hey Chris, you might ask Hugh there. He just came back on.
Oh, Hugh. Hi. Are you there?
I am.
Hi, Hugh. I'm just giving everyone a quick opportunity before we dive into the rules to sort of present their what's important to the group, either to bring up new issues since they've looked at the leasing rules, or to reiterate, some concerns that I think are still haven't been resolved.
Thank you, Craig. Sorry about that. We're also having an audit here today, so I'm having to leave to answer questions every now and then. I did hear most of the conversation, and I think we're doing a good job vetting here. It's just that, we need to continue to look at things that unintended consequences from something we may do, but I think that the amount of meetings we're having and then the length we're talking over each or discussing each item has been great, and I can't think of anything else I want to add at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I see definitely see some groupings here. Footprint came up a lot, and precision of line code. So. Hopefully we can work through that either today or at least get your questions and comments and bring them back in a second draft. You'll notice with the red line version, I tried to provide comments as to why things were added or subtracted. But this first cut is really entering in a lot of the big picture changes that have occurred since these rules were originally adopted 10 years ago. And that would include multiple legislative acts, the adoption of Part 5, primarily. And then also tried to incorporate in some of the other issues that we have discussed over the earlier 5 meetings, like first right to apply. And of course, we need to update sort of our fee schedule due to the work that's required under Part 5. And I also took a stab at adding some sort of lease calculation, which more than open, and we're very hopeful that you'll be able to help us with both the fee scheduling and get your thoughts on that, and what might be a appropriate leasing sort of calculations. So. Oh, pretend. Thank you. So I've got a couple different drafts. Everyone has a clean version and everyone has a red line version of the rules. And actually Jerry and I have another version that we started working on, which we'll start to use to incorporate your comments. Has everyone had a chance to look at the draft rules, or should we start with the red line version and discuss part of it? Okay.
My preference is the red line calls out the changes, so that for me is where I focused my attention.
Concur.
Let's work on that.
Just to clarify though, the whole thing is open, so if we needed to, just because you didn't introduce changes this time, doesn't mean that.
Yep, the whole rule division is open, yes. Is that the question?
Yes.
Folks on the phone, can you see the draft up on your computer screen through Adobe Connect?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, good. Well, as you will notice...
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Okay, great.
So I have a very simple request. So throughout the document, you have this change from, you see it in 1A, the ocean renewable energy monitoring equipment and ocean renewable energy facilities placed on, blah, blah, blah. So that shows up over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Is there a way that you can just define that and use one phrase, ocean renewable energy gear or equipment or something other than having that repetitively stated throughout the whole document?
We can look into that. Yeah.
Just for simplicity, once you define to include those two things, you don't have to say both of them every single time.
And I concur because I had a concern about using the word monitoring. It has a very specific meaning. Monitoring equipment is something different than, say, a device that measures something that's not being... Anyway, my point is monitoring has a very specific purpose, meaning. And I thought, I agree with Jason, having just a phrase that encompasses all associated equipment, whether it's actual monitoring something or maybe there for another purpose. So I would prefer not using the word monitoring it's in this text in this way.
Okay. I like that. Ocean renewable energy was defined in statute in Senate Bill 319, so we gotta continue to stick with that. But I do like changing all the rest of this to an associated equipment. I'm trying to think about how to do this right now.
So there are definitions in here for ocean renewable energy monitoring equipment, but you don't like that definition? It's definition number 20 on page 4. I don't think this definition is consistent with what you were saying, Scott.
Any related supporting structures probably does cover it, I would say. Although supporting structures may not be exactly the correct words, but I think the idea is we're talking about everything that's associated, and that's what we want this to say. I don't want somebody to be able to split hairs and say, well, this particular device isn't a monitoring device, so therefore it isn't covered under this. What we're talking about is all the associated equipment needs to be these rules should apply to all the associated equipment, whether its function is to generate electricity, carry electricity, monitor electricity, or some other thing that isn't covered under those three.
So this is Chris, this is Rick. This is a wonderful opportunity to discuss because in the last meeting we discussed that measurement instruments are measurement instruments. Scientific instruments are scientific instruments. If they're measuring wave height or measuring meteorological, they fall under the rules for monitoring, instrumentation and scientific equipment. And we want to avoid, your acoustic data current profiler is associated with a wave energy project, so it's different. I mean, it's scientific equipment. And I think this is something that I agree with Scott, we need to make sure that we're clear and there aren't any, we know what that means, and if you're applying for a permit to put a wave measurement device, but it's remotely linked to a wave energy project, it's a different kind of wave measurement device. That's nonsense.
Chris, I have a question for you, hypothetical.
Okay.
If Columbia Power showed up tomorrow and said, "Hey, we got a $20 million grant. We want to deploy the first demonstration project. We're going to put 3 buoys somewhere on the Oregon coast. We want to put out 3 ADCPs in kind of 10-mile segments so we can kind of get a test where the best wave resource in this general range." I'm just creating hypothetical. Would that, in anticipation of finding which site's best, has the best wave energy profile, that ADCP that would be deployed prior to the Ocean Energy Project, how would you regulate that? 125 or 140?
125.
And for us non-lawyers, 125 is which?
It's the special use rules for deployment of scientific experiment or equipment in that case. But then if it was out there with a WEC,
they'd have to convert over somehow.
Well, you wanted to, you'd all have it all under one authorization.
Wrap it into.
You would have 2 authorizations then, right? You'd have it would be in conjunction with a WEC. And I'm saying WEC just to use the term.
So I think just my point was, that's a good answer. My point in the hypothetical was sort of just get out on the table. Like, look, any work that's done in advance of the actual project is scientific experimentation until they decide to actually go with a 140 lease or temporary use authorization, at which point any gear related to that wave energy facility is now brought into that 140 lease.
That would be what I would suggest, and that's what we are suggesting. Now, with that said, we've tried, as we've discussed this over the last few meetings, to make sure one of the major concerns of industry going back was that you don't have the first right to apply for the next step if you go under that 7 rules. And as you probably look through here, and based on the memos we've drafted up over the last couple of weeks, we've tried to make that connection, which we think is in line with Part 5 of the Territorial Sea Plan, and also would hopefully help provide that path forward for industry.
So could you clarify that, Chris? So you're thinking what you try to do is indeed create a right of first refusal?
Yeah, for the deployment of scientific equipment.
Well, you mean for the right to move to the 140 lease?
Yes. No, actually not even to move to the lease, but I think for the right to move to a demonstration project.
So let me, I'll get these now. So it sounds to me from the discussion that B and the definition of B are supposed to be handled under Division 125. But you're saying that you put it in here to allow for a transition.
We can come back to that. Let's start back here at the beginning. So we have a comment from the RAC, suggestion to state once in the rule that the long statement with regards to ocean renewable energy, monitoring equipment, and facilities, and also somehow make it clear that that monitoring equipment includes all associated.
Yeah, the very first statement is, this rule applies to all ocean renewable energy projects, which include all monitoring associated gear as well as the energy in the cable, the energy generation devices, the cables, etc. Just put it right at the front and never say it again.
Yeah,
that's it. Equipment and facilities.
Yeah.
And since our last meeting, Jerry and I have worked on this a little bit. Because actually, this talks about the territorial sea, which starts at the mean extreme low tide line. Is that right?
Mean lower, lower.
Mean lower, lower. Oh, great. Well, we can correct that. Good, good. But what's come up with our telecom cables is that DOJ has noted that DSL's proprietary responsibility is to all the submerged submersible bands. So we've been just sort of writing that in to the cable easements, but we will add something to this language to associate that. So as long as the department has proprietary responsibility, that a cable associated with the ocean energy lease will be covered under the authorization. Does that sound right, Jerry?
Yeah, so technically the cables right now would be under 140, what's the other one?
183.
83, and then 122 for the peak part from the low water up, from the low water up to the high water on the beach.
So,
and we're going to try.
Chris, I'd like to put my 10 up for a question.
Okay, great. Jerry, finish.
I was going to say we're going to try and make this 140 so that it encompasses any cables or anything going from being low water to the high water on the beach. So we don't have to worry about two sets of roads. That's the plan.
Under the beach. You said on the beach.
Under the beach. Yes.
Under the beach.
Yeah, we also have rules for that.
Right. But ours are for the easements, where yours are usually the permitting. So.
Just to get back to where I think we are with this, where we talk about the applicability and purpose of these rules, I think we clarify, though, in 3 that these rules do not apply to scientific experiments and scientific equipment placed in the territorial sea that is not in conjunction with an ocean renewable energy conversion device. But I will be happy to take suggestions on clarifying that if we think that's needed. And with that said, I want to go to Joanne to see if she had any follow-up questions first, and then Rick, because I'm not sure if we...
So, yeah, you confused me, because if there's anything in this section that is covered under Division 125, I would say it's redundant under this section, unless you just refer to Division 125, the section that you're trying to clarify. I would take out anything that is already covered under Division 125 out of this section. That's my recommendation. Too much is too much.
And that has happened, has it not, under 3B, where it specifically states proprietary authorization for such uses are governed under 125?
Yes.
Kind of called out all scientific gear and said, these rules don't apply. That's 125.
Right. That's really all you need.
I think it's right because it says, monitoring equipment for an ocean energy conversion device. So as long as there's not a wave energy device out there, the scientific gear is just scientific gear. Once there's an associated wave energy device, it's monitoring equipment, in a sense.
Under the definition number 20, I think you're right. It's associated.
It's associated, and it might be the acoustic Doppler profiler, but might be something required to study for how the WEC affects crustaceans.
Might be mammal.
Green sturgeons or something like that.
I hate to ask this, but what if the request is, well, we want to know what happens, 5 miles that way on sediment transport. You can put something out there. Is that 125 or 140?
I'll think about it. My first blush is that's 125.
Okay.
I think that behooves you as well. I mean, I don't know if you want that all in your chart, but I've always thought 125 is an easier process than 140. But Andy has a comment.
And don't forget Rick on the line.
Oh, yes. Okay. Rick first. Rick.
So I'm looking at this from the project lifecycle standpoint, where in order to decide that we have enough information to go into a permitting effort, we might want to put out scientific equipment and measure wave energy. And I want to make sure that subparagraph B cannot be brought back and say, oh, but this is scientific equipment that you are going to use to make decisions associated with installing a wave energy device, so it's separate and you have to go through all this other stuff as opposed to any garden variety scientific equipment. And that is not monitoring equipment for if someone's not going to take this out of context, that's fine, but I can see if it's not monitoring equipment directly associated with a ocean renewable energy device, then it's scientific equipment. If it's like the piece of equipment from University of Washington that's actually landing on and powered by the wave energy device, sure, that comes under 140. But there's a whole bunch of scientific information you need before you go into the permitting process, and that should be clearly scientific equipment. So convince me that I don't have anything to be worried about.
Well, I'm not sure. How does the rest of the group feel? Do you think that sub B is a bright enough line, or do you have a suggestion for amended language?
I would suggest deleting it.
You suggest that makes a brighter line?
B?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Jason said, the first sentence should just say ocean renewable energy equipment and facilities placed on blah blah blah. That's defined, and then go to 2, and then 3 says what the other stuff applies to and divisions that cover it. So simple is better. You have enough rules and laws and words that contradict themselves. Every time you write more stuff, it's contradictory, and I think I heard that people want it not ambiguous. So more words can be very ambiguous.
Okay, let me give Andy a chance, and then we'll go to Scott.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens with the oceanic research community a lot of times is that there's equipment out there. They become opportunities, platforms of opportunity. So I could see instances where people who just want to do scientific research on something other than wave energy might want to use the same space or even attach their gear to similar pieces of equipment. I just think we might want to think about that and how others who come in after a lease is authorized or a facility is in place, how those scientific permits might intersect with this an existing entity. I don't know. It's a thought for the future, given that the tendency of researchers. If there's vessels going out there to do maintenance or equipment, that's oftentimes an opportunity that people can save money on a research project. How are those additional research
which really involves attaching another device?
It might just be within the same kind of region that the facility is in, or it might actually be attached to the anchor at the bottom. So I think that we should be also thinking about what happens with other entities that might want to use the same space, as long as they're in conversation or communication with the company that's got the lease. So that's not necessarily related to these rules and the implementation of this facility, but it is something that I can see the scientific community thinking about down the road.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
On 1B, where I suggest an edit, if it's retained, if that B is retained, I don't think the word "that is necessary," those 3 words are good, because you could argue we have a device, but it isn't necessary, which is something we want to do, and so it becomes one of these ambiguous phrases. And I think just to clean that up, we would delete "that is necessary." Other equipment structures for ocean renewable monitoring equipment or conversion device. So I think that covers it all very well and is clear.
Okay, I'll make a note. I have a quick question for Joanne, going back to 3. So, this whole section of applicability and purpose is to provide guidance to somebody reading this for the first time. So that's why we have the do not apply to section. It's sort of commonly confused issues.
Right.
So what you suggested is delete it, right?
No. I suggested deleting B. and leaving 3 so that it clearly describes what the intent is. So you don't need B if you have 3.
1B
is what I'm suggesting. 1B, yes.
Okay, see, that's fine. That's
1B is what I'm suggesting. Delete that.
Too.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Okay.
Good clarification then. No, because it was 1B that I was referring to. That's I think there's a lot of language in here that's unnecessary with all the other pointing to the other guidance and rules that apply. Yeah.
So okay, cool.
So just delete 1B if you have 3B.
Yeah, if you have 3B, exactly. That's what I was saying.
I'll write those components right.
So, Chris, while we're talking about 3B, it's that is not monitoring equipment. We need a clarification. Not monitoring equipment for ocean renewable energy conversion device performance might be an idea there. If we're talking about monitoring of performance, that's a piece of ocean renewable energy equipment. If we're talking about monitoring waves and whatnot, that's scientific equipment.
And see, I would just take out monitoring. I would just say equipment associated with ocean. Because again, that's defined somewhere else. Monitoring this sounds like tripping everybody up.
Delia.
Yeah, so I just wanted to again link these back to definition number 20 because I think there's a little bit, that's where it could get confusing if you were reading through this for the first time and you're saying, okay, what does or doesn't, which aspects of my project does this apply to or doesn't it apply to? And then you go to the monitoring definition for ocean renewable energy monitoring equipment. It means the test buoys, floats, platforms, and any other devices used for, and I'm skipping down to part B here, to collect data including blah, 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 blah. So it is eventually, when you read through definition 20, it does get down to anything for the project that's used to collect data. But
then that's ambiguous, right? Because it points back to one point. So I suggest.
So I think there's kind of it's a little bit circular and could lead to some confusion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So I'm down at definition 20 now. Would you suggest
deleting it? I'm all for deleting it. Getting right to the chase.
I think that if we're going to say anything about monitoring equipment in here, then we do need to have a definition of some sort.
If we do,
yeah.
If we don't, then we don't.
Yeah.
That's because equipment that's associated with ocean renewable energy is going to be defined elsewhere, and it's going to be reviewed by DSL. It's going to be reviewed by the DART, and they're going to say, "Hey, that is associated with." So it's It's covered to me.
Well, there's not a statutory definition of monitoring equipment that would need to follow, so this is something you could delete and change to, as Scott said, just include as all associated structures.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, in my eyes, the distinction is you can be measuring the environment and all the aspects of it, or you can be monitoring the performance of a device. And if it's, monitoring the performance, then that's a piece of equipment in the project. But if it's monitoring the waves, that's not.
So make a note here. Give me 1 second, folks. Rack suggestion.
Jason's first.
Okay, you go ahead.
He's offering a pressure valve.
Well, that wasn't my suggestion to delete it. My suggestion was to clarify what the monitoring equipment is. So when it says to collect data, in my mind that means anything that's associated with a certain project. So it might be before let's just call it a buoy is deployed. You have to go out and collect some data. It might be during the deployment. It might be after. But if it's not related to a project, then it would off ramp to 1.5.
But the issue here, Chris, can I raise my hand?
Can I put you in line real quick, Rick? We got a couple other people on that. Scott and Jason, are you both along the same ilk, or have you moved on?
No,
Scott.
So I beg to disagree with you, Rick, on, before we were talking about scientific equipment that was deployed prior to deployment of a device, and that would be scientific equipment authorized and permitted under scientific equipment rules. But that anything associated when the devices were in, then that would be part of the wave energy facility. And now it sounds like that's, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but it sounds like that's getting morphed into something different. My feeling is we can't have it both ways. If we want to say that devices that are used to determine the characteristics of a site before any devices are put in are scientific, fine. But then once we have a facility, some kind of a device, any type of a device in, one or multiple, then any structures, devices, equipment, sensors that are in any way related ought to come with, be included as part of the facility, because if you say, well, it's a current meter or it's a wave height sensor, it's not measuring the performance of this particular device, so it's clearly a scientific instrument, that wouldn't be there monitoring the waves if it weren't for the fact that we have a device, a facility there. So I think if we want to say instruments to characterize a site ahead of time, science instruments, but once we get a facility, I think it's pretty clear we got to have everything under the umbrella of the rules for a facility.
So I'm almost there with you, Scott. The only limitation I have here, and it just hit me, was environmental monitoring versus the performance of the facility. So I don't know, there are going to be many required tests done associated with the project, hydrophones or sediment collecting, and do we want that in 140, or are these individual 125 permits? So environmental monitoring versus performance monitoring or facility monitoring or something that's just associated with the energy production as opposed to the myriad small tests that would be needed associated with a project.
Rick, and then Scott,
Delia.
and then Walter. Oh, Delia.
I don't know when Walter. Maybe Walter.
So my opening concept is that it's in the best interest of the state to measure the environment, learn about it, and we should permit appropriately, but remove obstacles associated with scientific monitoring of the environment. And when Delia mentioned, well, you may have to do some follow-up associated with measuring, the impact on species, that's scientific. When you add the environmental monitoring equipment for a wave energy project into wave energy equipment, it makes it more difficult and more expensive to do the same scientific environmental measurement task. So I think we should properly permit the scientific and environmental measurement equipment associated with a wave energy project, but we should make that permitting path clear. This is environmental measurement equipment, in contrast to this is a piece of equipment that measures the performance of a device, which is, and so I think the ADCP that's measuring the waves in the middle of the wave park, that's environmental measurement equipment. And you properly permit, you properly, ensure that it's installed correctly and removed correctly and all that kind of stuff. But it's far more expensive to permit anything associated with wave energy than it is to permit stuff for scientific measurement. At least that's my impression. We're raising the bar that will diminish the willingness of scientists and environmental functions to help us gain more information. Over.
Delia.
Okay, so I just had a question for the group and maybe a clarification from DSL. Would we want a developer to have to get multiple permits for their project, or if they wanted to do something that fell under 140, would we still want them to go and get a bunch of individual 125s for activities that are already associated with their project? I mean, I think we're. Let me finish. So I think we're kind of arguing the nuance of what's included and what's not included, and what's associated and what's not associated, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, if we're looking for something that's clear and simple, and something that developers can read through and follow, and DSL has the ability to apply it consistently because it's right there in black and white. That's what we want. So my question again is, do we want the permitting process to involve, okay, you got to get a 140 for this and a 125 for this, and if you decide in 5 years to do this, then you got to get another 125. I would put forth that I think it makes more sense to just have them bundle everything under the initial permitting, and DSL and the developer enter into agreement, and these rules are the construct for what?
140.
And a 140.
And adaptive management that would require specific unforeseen tests in the future would be included in that 140?
That's a good question. Is adaptive management? Yeah. I think adaptive management is handled under Part 5. I don't know that
I'm not cued on adaptive management per se, but just the fact that I'm thinking of something that would cue or require some sort of study in the future that was not part of that original 140. So, a year later, this is louder than we thought it was going to be. Under our adaptive management rules, we're going to need you to put out some acoustic hydrophones. Okay. Is that 140? Under the original 140, do we get a new 140? Do we do a 125?
That's a good question for DSL, but my understanding is that the 140 is the context for the proprietary agreement. So it's not a new 140. The 140, what?
Be modified?
Modify it or amend it.
Okay. What is that? Is that a phone call? Is that a...
It's usually a form and a fee.
We want to do X, and okay, it's associated with this existing project, and it's just putting out hydrophones or some other environmental listening device, and it's no big deal. You're not going to say no to it, right?
We could. We would have the option to say no, but most times, depending on what it is, we usually go with, if they want to do additional work, we can do an amendment or modify it to be included. But again, that would be something that would have to be developed.
That's a good question. I have some thoughts, but why don't I wait for the other people to...
I'm just going to agree with Scott. I think there needs to be a clear division on what these scientific monitoring devices are, and that needs to be separate. And once something, if it can be put on as an addition to the permit to the wave energy site, if they need to do some additional monitoring and monitoring.
Can you speak towards the speaker a little bit?
So, I think there needs to, I'm agreeing with Scott, I think there needs to be a clear division between these scientific monitoring projects and what goes on as an extra add-on to a wave energy project. So, whether it can be done with an addition to the permit or whatever, I think it should be done that way, but I think there should be a clear separation. So,
let's let everyone get through it. We'll tackle this on the board real quick.
So, my comment would be that if you had a non-performance monitoring device, let's say we're not measuring the output of the wave energy converter, but we have hydrophones to listen to how it may affect marine mammals that are vocalizing in the area, something like that, completely independent of the device, but yet its only purpose there is because the device is there. We're monitoring strictly because there's a device there. We wouldn't be putting hydrophones there to listen for the effects if it weren't for the fact that there was a wave energy device. So I don't see how you can separate that from a wave energy facility. It's part of it. It's part and parcel. It's a condition of having the device in the water. So it just seems bizarre to try to pull that off separately as a separate science device.
Well, if it's
it's not the same company? What if it's somebody else doing research of their own volition, interested in an issue that's associated with the device?
Well, then I think it's a separate issue.
That is a separate permit under 125.
It's a different applicant, right?
Right, yeah. But
Yeah, just when I listen to Delia, this current of, oh my God, somebody's got to get a permit. Because I've run a local planning department for the last 4.5 years, I have day-to-day experience with people. You know, really modest individuals who want to put a little deck on with a couple steps, and they got to get a permit. It's not a big deal. If you're a professional, you'll get a permit. And so this idea of, oh my God, we got to make sure they do this or do that, get the permits. And I would only say to my friends in the university community and whatever the wave energy industry is and the offshore industry is, get your permits, hire the right people. It is incumbent, though, upon us that are regulators, is that we need to make it really clear about what do you got to do to get a permit. That's where the rubber hits the road. If the permit process is some labyrinth that nobody understands how to get through it takes forever, that's not good. But the threshold question is, it's not a big deal to ask people to get a permit, for God's sakes. And we ask everybody to get permits, and it works well for our society. So please, let's sort of curb this inherent, oh my God, somebody's got to get a permit, and that's going to destroy the wave energy industry. I think that's nonsense. Thank you.
I didn't say that.
There's a current. I've heard it for years, Dillian. I was piggybacking off of your, as usual, clear statement.
Just for the record, I didn't say
No,
that.
and in fact, I think you were, half of what you were saying was suggesting, yeah, go get your 125s. That's what I was reacting to.
Let's be clear what they need to get, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I was certainly not, I was pivoting off of your remark and hearing this, and it just triggered this actually, it was a discussion that I heard from Captain Williams last time, I think when we were in Newport, about, oh my God, somebody from OSU had to get a permit, and they were complaining about having to get permits. And trust me, if it's a pet peeve of mine.
Anno, once again, I think your recollections are out of context, and let's just move on.
Well, I'd like to let anyone else on the phone have any comments.
There you go.
We need some additional clarification, it sounds like, on modern equipment.
Or just leave it alone. Simplify the language and refer to it as 125. That's my suggestion.
So,
yes.
I think that as we try to clarify this language and make it concise and transparent, it seems to me that the various hypotheticals that have been brought up, like future scientists wanting to deploy something affiliated with a wave energy device that's unrelated, but they're just using it as a platform, for example. This is a good question. I don't know. I feel like the state can handle this. Future projects are 125. Anything related to the wave energy device is 140. Unless it's a pre-deployment that you're just monitoring in anticipation of the project. We already clarified that's the case. So to me, you can reduce this language pretty simply. So these rules apply to ocean renewable energy facilities, included all associated equipment, anaerobic, and on you go.
Okay.
Done. And scientific experiment language is down here, 125, pulls it out exclusively. But I do want to, before I give up, I do want to hear from Justin Kluwer and Dan Helene, both of whom have been banging their head against the permits that apparently aren't that big of a deal for the last 12 years. So Justin and Dan, if y'all have any thoughts on how difficult it's been to get your, no, that's right, Dan, you're public. Thoughts on getting various permits or environmental studies. Justin, you did environmental studies with your project. So any thoughts on, any experience on what it was like to deal with that, or any takeaway lessons?
Well, I mean, it's not an easy question to answer, Jason. I mean, I think we have to compare apples to apples if we want something that's worthwhile to add to this conversation. The project that Dan and I have been most involved in the last couple of years has obviously been the PMAX sets project, and that's a 25-year, 20 device, 20 megawatt, FERC license. And so I haven't heard anything here in the last many months or the types of projects that we're talking about that get us there yet. Someday maybe, and I understand that that's part of what we're trying to hypothesize on what will this look like down the road, but it's not straightforward, and it just depends on what the action is, what the proposed project is, and what the level of scrutiny or the process then is commensurate to the scale of the project. So I don't think there's a simple answer for your question. I mean, obviously, what we've been working on with OSU has been, difficult at times and challenging, and for a lot of different reasons. But we continue to grind through it. So those are my thoughts. I know it's not a perfect answer to your question, but yeah, permits do matter. If it's something straightforward, it's a little easier to get your head around. If it's something more complex, like we're dealing with PMXS project, then it's more complex. It's really that simple.
I think this has been a very robust conversation. How far off do we think we are on this? I actually thought we were in a pretty good spot, but the rules must not be very clear. I thought 125 covered anything you deployed that wasn't associated with the device, just to collect data.
Can you say project?
Yeah, I would.
Project.
A little bit better than device.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good project. And then when you want to initiate a project and you come in under the 140 rules, associated monitoring equipment that is, I would say, within the authorized.
Having a hard time hearing you.
That is within the authorized area, comes under 140. Something we can totally discuss in these rules is if you have to add new equipment due to adaptive management, how we amend that, and if it requires a chart, and how simple should that amendment be? Should that be a simpler amendment process to your 140 authorization? So that's something to think about for a little later. And then if you're deploying other scientific monitoring equipment outside of it, it'd be an additional permit, but under 125 is what I was thinking. Otherwise, I don't know if you just keep expanding the authorized area for the 140 lease to cover something
I think
up there.
I think that's very clear.
Okay.
I like it.
Well, Delia has a comment.
No, that I was just going to say that I think you just described my interpretation of what you have put in here. I think that there's some suggestions for removal or clarifying language, and I think that one of the potential off-ramps that gets confusing is changing device to project, because if I want to develop somewhere and I come to you and I say, I just want to learn about the wave, environment, and maybe in the future I'll deploy a project, but I'm not applying for that sort of permit now, then you give me 125.
Yep.
Right? And if I come to you and I say, I want to develop this area and I'm going to apply for that and I need to do a little research first, then I get a 140.
Yep.
Big deal.
Yep. And I will just note, if anyone who's ever wrote administrative rules, you cannot write a rule for every possible scenario. That's why there's discretion for staff. That's why Sherry gets paid the big bucks. That's why there's an appeals process. So I really do appreciate the conversation. I think we've looked at almost every scenario I can think of right now, except for maybe foreign governments. I don't know. I don't know. But at this point,
China wants to deploy a wave energy device here.
Right? A minor.
The foreign government always have an LLC here.
what time is it?
Sorry.
Okay.
11:40.
We're going to take lunch in a little bit. I need 5 minutes just to actually collect my thoughts because I was trying to take
And
notes.
I want to apologize for whining about people who whine about getting permits.
I'm a planning commissioner in a small town, and I deal with a lot of conditional use approvals for extra oversized garages, and I hear that too. So I appreciate that.
So I just want to be clear. Are you going to address the concising request that I had regarding eliminating this reference to ocean renewable energy monitoring equipment or ocean renewable energy facility on, in, over, that's repeated over and over and over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've got a note on that right now.
I don't think it's necessary. I'm just suggesting it as simplifying, but it is kind of over the top. It just shows up almost every other sentence, and it's unnecessary.
I understand. Yep, and there's ways to tackle that. I know in other rules, our ownership jurisdiction is submerged and submersible and submerged or submerged. It's some strange legal statement, and we usually just say submerged and submersible. But I will think about how to clarify that. I need 5 minutes though, so let's take a break, get some coffee, have a donut.
No, I ate 2 already.
I want to figure out how I need to memorialize. I'm having trouble with the red line and doing this, so I need to huddle up with DSL staff real quick here.
I was going to say with yourself, yes.
I would really like to pull.
Make a suggestion. You just go to lunch and come back on a phone. Or when did you have lunch?
What time is it right now?
It's a quarter to 11.
Okay, yeah. Folks on the phone? Why don't we take our 30-minute lunch break and then come back?
12:15. Make it 12:30.
Make it 12:30. That's fine with me.
Luna is the best place to.
Okay, great.
Is that driving?
Let's walk.
You can walk. Can we it's quicker if you're not?
I'm staying here. I've got a lot to do, so I'll be here.
Can we bring you something to lunch?
I'm fine.
I think we're staying here.
You don't have to stay. No, I'm kidding.
I just had a meeting this week that we were telling yesterday.
Okay, no problem. No, it's good. I really want to pull up. I don't want to look up this one. I want to pull up the other resume. The problem is everyone's working off the red line version.
It's that way. Actually, I'm walking that way. Yep.
Yeah, because that's what we did. I did too.
Are the kids doing it?
But I think if you pull up
I think everyone has the right one.
they do, but if you pull up the clean version, like if she says definition 24, it'll still come up 24.
Yeah,
and that way you can make clean comments and changes
There's a lot of driving
on
around.
the new ones.
Those are
I would
opportunities really where,
go to your clean,
Yeah.
you know, you try
go to your clean one, but then have that one to look at so you know where they're talking about.
You missed the whole thing in school.
That's what I
but,
did.
My friend John.
So it's a good revisit.
Lynn and I, we worked with John there for 9 days.
We didn't actually make any substantial changes, right? It was just kind of.
No.
No, but even with that, though, there wasn't any changes, right? I mean, we're still looking at 145, 140, except for taking out. So we don't keep saying associated.
Yeah, but the DIV is really the only thing.
Yeah.
And then
Simplifying the
term.
leaving the
And then,
Well, so
and then,
but that's good. Because it follows. Well, in mine, I mean, that's definitely my issue is the repetitive stuff.
yes.
And I even told you that when we were looking at like, can we do something else?
Yeah, I totally get where this is going. It's finding a term that you can define, and then this is what we can use.
Are you going to go to lunch? Or did you bring on?
I didn't bring anything.
So much.
Want to go on?
I'm gonna make sure you're.
I'm fine. Nope.
On a sandwich or anything?
Nope. I'm good.
You can walk over and get something good.
No, I'm good. Yeah, I've got things to think about.
I know. The food helps the thought.
I've got a band.
Okay, food helps the brain. Okay, just checking.
Mr. DeBlanc, are you going to lunch?
I brought stuff.
He's so organized. I'm lucky I have a corn on.
I know, right? That's That's what I said.
There's still some granola bars and a banana over there. If you
Okay.
like. So
He said from a mathematical standpoint, he said right less than 50% sugar.
Yeah.
And even if they did 50% of it, less than 40 like
Right.
So that's the first. He said, so now looking hungry. I said, no, I'm hungry.
That absolutely should be a humbling element for any of them, and it's really so interesting now to hear like, well, let's just throw the electoral college out, and it's like, all right, while we're at it, let's just make sure that Maryland and Rhode Island don't have 2 U.S. senators, because that's not fair to California that has 2 U.S. senators. And where does that end? You know?
The whole thing about the roll up making me more urban. You choose to live in another neighborhood gets that's your own volition.
How about just people getting out and voting, for God's sakes? It's embarrassing. I even said that to my daughter, that she was saying to me, halfway through the campaign, she goes, well, Dad, who are you going to vote for? And I said, well, that's my order. That's a private.
We're very far off.
And she goes, you're going to vote for Hillary, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because in her school, there were all Bernie supporters, because again, the millennials are new now, it was cool to be for Bernie. And so she said, you're going to vote for Hillary, because you're old. I was like, no, brother.
There's a banana, there's granola bars. That's something I've been doing.
So, I'm also, I'm going to have to take about 6 months break from Rachel Maddow. I cannot, listen to that kind of matching going on with her and the condescending. And I did listen, I was watching, I chose to watch, it's kind of like a scientific experiment, certain pundits throughout the entire process to see if
You want to go have lunch?
they were picking up things,
Sure.
just to see more.
Do you want to go?
Like scientific about how it's really trending. You've got some kind of. I don't know any place here really.
Well, the thing is that nowhere's fast.
Oh.
So.
Go ahead, lunacy.
Lunacy?
Lunacy? Is it really called lunacy?
Is it fast enough that we'll get back in 45 minutes?
We should do.
Okay. We're going to lunacy.
Okay.
Let's just check it out.
Do you want us to get you anything?
No.
Okay.
You can always get it to go if you eat it while we're here.
Yeah, I'm good. Yep.
There's always a little grocery store.
I gotta grab my. Are we walking?
Yeah, it's quicker than Oda.
I'll catch up with you. I gotta grab my wallet.
So where'd you stay, Scott?
The screen is one thing.
So you didn't get the right donuts.
Huh?
You didn't get the right donuts.
I know. They eat them all.
Wait. Didn't satisfy the.
This is making my day right now.
Yeah. Keep having problems with my timesheet.
Ocean Renewable Energy Monitoring Equipment and Ocean Renewable Energy facilities. Ocean renewable energy. Ocean renewable energy facilities, comma, monitoring equipment, monitoring equipment, comma,
Didn't see those guys are done in there. ocean renewable energy facilities, monitoring equipment, and all associated structures that are necessary for an ocean renewable energy project placed on in or over standards.
My wife does that stuff all the time, and this problem is usually on the WebEx end of things or whatever you're doing. Do you guys need anything from me this afternoon?
No, I think we did. Okay. Everything keeps working.
All right, and are you breaking for lunch or? Okay. So when are you going to be about done? Doesn't matter, but when are you going to be?
2:30ish.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you're having a good meeting.
We are, so far so good.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to grab a quick picture here if I can, just for the
Please
setup,
do.
because I'm trying to get different setups.
And adjacent to territorial sea.
Okay. Hi. How are you? Good.
Good morning.
Charlie's back.
Hey Charlie, we're on a lunch break. We'll be back at 12:30.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All suggestions for deleting. References in these rules too. All references and individuals to the ocean rule. All references in these rules to the ocean renewable energy project include steal this song. All references in these rules to ocean renewable energy includes. I don't know why this thing's not showing.
Oh yeah, all of a sudden, maybe if you go a little smaller.
I didn't mean that. I meant on my computer, it's not just like this much. There's an inch and a half on each side of the monitor. It's just black.
Oh, that is weird.
What time would you be getting to a call on Friday morning? I'm relatively open. Okay, so you got nothing in the morning? Good morning is preferable. Nice. Yeah, felt better and I had something to do.
Mute Andrew. Yeah, which is good.
that gets you like 2 full weeks, dude. Yeah. I'm jealous. I'll be doing a little here and there first. I'm leaving here and coming back here. I don't know why this isn't on my calendar. Oh, so you know, next week I'm in Portland Monday for the funders meeting. And then Tuesday I have to be in Salem. I might be going back to Salem on Wednesday too, so just some FYI. Maybe that's what I was thinking. I could make it to the holiday party because I have to be in Portland Monday morning. Yeah. So I might be able to make it. I'm just seeing how I'm feeling. I'm still feeling run down and hurting. What is it? No, I'm just not going to want to be there in general. But I do need to be at this meeting and oh, Jesus. Make sure that I'm on the mute.
He's put himself on mute. How's the coffee?
It's okay. I wouldn't pay for it. Is Will starting to get excited for Christmas yet? Or?
We put a tree up, and he got very excited.
Yeah.
The lights. He's running around. Merry Christmas! He likes to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. He plays his guitar.
Nice.
He just strums across.
Right.
It was Baba Black Sheep.
I don't know that one.
Singing music. Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. You never heard that?
No, I don't think I know.
Of course, ABC is the same song too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I was talking to Anthony the other day.
Oh yeah.
And he was saying how I guess Kelly's getting kind of big. And yet she still has...
Kick her to the curb.
But she's got 2 more months to go.
Recorders on that. That was a joke.
That was a joke. But just that people have been saying, oh, you must be doing a week. And she's got a couple months to go. I was like, oh, I bet that's not making her feel very good. I haven't seen her much. I haven't seen him much either. I mean, the weather doesn't help.
Yeah.
They're going to North Carolina for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Last trip for a while, huh?
Yeah.
How about that? Bring them some dinners or something once they have a kiddo.
That's what we plan on doing.
It can be a difficult time. It can be difficult times trying to just do multiple things at once.
And without family nearby.
Yeah. You never know, maybe the baby will sleep like a baby. Mine slept like a baby, not
right. Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. Woke up every 2 hours screaming.
Well, it seems like a long time ago, especially now that Will sleeps from about 8 until 6 when we wake him up.
Miles, he stays up playing with his Legos, but when he's asleep, he's out. Ella, she'll wake up at like 4:30, and on the weekends, maybe sometimes 5, and come in her room, start tapping us, and she wants to get up, and then we'll bring her into bed with us. But right now she's got a sinus infection, so she's really coughing a lot, so that's waking her up. So she's on meds, but she hasn't been getting a good night's sleep, so she's pretty tired. I was home yesterday with her all day yesterday.
Yeah. Oh man, sorry to hear that. Poor little Ella.
Yeah, I was hoping we could, it's just antibiotics, so it's really not arresting her cough. Mm-hmm. I bought we had a cool humidifier, but I got a warm humidifier. It's a piece of junk. Because I don't see anything coming out of it.